eCapitol News Director Sean Ashley joins us to discuss this week's budget numbers and how that will impact what happens at the Capitol this year. Sean, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Now, break down the numbers for us. The board certified $692 million for the budget hole, but the figure we're hearing now is close to $900 million. Why is there a difference?
Well, what you have to do is look at the money they actually spent this last year, and a portion of the rainy day fund money was spent in order to ultimately come to a balanced budget, approximately $145 million from the rainy day fund. Then state agencies were given the authorization to use about $32 million more from their own revolving funds, again in an effort to help balance the budget. And that's where you go from $696 to the nearly $900 million that they're facing a deficit of. It really illustrates the problem that lies throughout the $696 million as well. The fact that we used a lot of our reserve funds in order to balance the budget. $612 million of that $696 represents money that was transferred from one fund to another, the cash flow reserve fund, and then appropriated. So you're looking at a large chunk of reserves that were spent that they're not going to have available this next year to help balance the budget.
Now, what are the possible sources of additional revenue that they are considering this year?
Right. Governor Mary Fallin says she's already talking with legislative leaders about that. And one thing they're looking at is the sales tax, what's called broadening the base. On one hand, the governor points out she would like to eliminate some of the exemptions that are there, things for sports tickets and other items that are sold which are not subject to sales tax. She's also talking about expanding it to certain services. For example, when you take your when you take your dog or a cat to a groomer, there's no sales tax on that service, and she pointed that out specifically. By expanding the base, applying it to items that are currently not taxed and services that are not taxed, they could make up some of that money, and of course they'll look at other alternatives as well.
Now, there are a number of new lawmakers that weren't here last year when they had the $1.3 billion budget hole. How is that expected to change the dynamic of this year's budget negotiations?
Well, I think the Governor's Secretary of Finance, Preston Dorflinger, feels that it will work in their advantage because you have people coming in with their own fresh ideas, for one thing, and secondly, who haven't had to deal with the shortfalls of the past. As he said, this is an opportunity for us to educate them on the various problems that the state faces financially, both on the revenue side and on the expenditure side. But one thing he was very careful to point out is that unlike previous sessions where they've been able to look at budget cuts as a way of balancing the budget, he said explicitly, we're not going to be able to cut our way out of this situation.
eCapitol News Director Sean Ashley, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome.